Okay.
I'm Dave, I'm alcoholic. I'm a member of the High Noon Group, and Lee is a member of the Friday Florence Group, Florence, and he comes to our meeting, the Noon Group, because he likes to hear a solution. And the same reason I go to that group too. So um, anyway, it's kind of like birds of a feather flock together sort of thing, and they're just a natural attraction to Lee as being a friend. And he's one of these guys that when they read how it works, he follows it in the book. And he's serious about his alcoholism and serious about his solution. So with that, so I got my friend Lee.
Thanks, Dave. Thank you, Kelly and Stanley, for asking me to come speak this morning. I am really, really, really nervous. My sponsor told me a long time ago that if you ever speak, you gotta have a coat tie on. I do half-ass, so I'm just telling you. But, got my tie on. My name is Lee and I'm an alcoholic. Also, he told me I should never have notes, but I heard earlier this week that Disneyland, celebrated its, 70th birthday. It celebrated, its birthday started in 1955. So it was the 70th birthday, which means, I'm 5 years older than Disneyland. And I can't remember what I had for breakfast this morning, so I have to have notes. My sobriety date is July 6th of 1992. To help those that are trouble with algebra, that's 33 years. 4 days, 33 years and 4 days, or 12,067 1 days at a time. I over here is thinking this guy's lying his ass off. I have a sponsor who has a sponsor. I go to 2 to 3 meetings a week. I do love the noon group, but my home group is the Florence group, down in Florence, of course. Brilliant. But it's at 7:30 on Friday nights, and I invite anybody to come on down. We, like the noon group, focus on the solution. It's a great meeting. We had sharing with Annie. We had a young lady in the meeting Friday night that had 26 days sober on Friday night. She said she'd been to a meeting every day, 26 meetings. And then she said, and it still touches my heart, she said that she has one of these watches that can, you can tell your pulse and, weather and all kinds of crap on them. But she said that since she checked her watch told her that her average pulse rate dropped 10 beats per minute since she came in the program. Coincidental or a God shot. I thought it was pretty amazing. But I want to share with you my experience and my observations in the last 33 years. Try not to share my opinion, which does come up once in a while. But I'd like to start with a poem, because this poem describes my alcoholism to a T. It's called The Drunkard and the Pig. It was early last December, as near as I can remember. I was walking down the street in tipsy pride. No one was I disturbing as I lay down by the curbing, and a pig came up and lay down by my side. As I lay there in the gutter, thinking thoughts that I shall not utter, a lady passing by was heard to say, "You can tell a man who boozes by the company he chooses." And the pig got up and walked away. I came in here on July the 6th of 1992. It was my first trip in. I had relapsed. If you're new, relapse is not a requirement. Always not. But I came in on July the 6th, and I had hope. My hope was I could learn to control and enjoy my drinking. The problem was the more I controlled my drinking, the less I enjoyed it. And the more I enjoyed it, the less I could control it. I have a progressive, persistent, and fatal disease called alcoholism. It doesn't matter how I was raised or what happened to me when I was young. None of that determined whether I was going to be an alcoholic or not. What makes me an alcoholic is what is described in the big book, is once I take a drink, an allergy kicks in, I have a craving, and I can't stop drinking. And I cannot keep it from drinking, although I quit hundreds of times. I mean, I wake up in the morning, I will never, promise my wife at that time, she no longer my wife, but she never liked me very much anyway. Good reason. But I could wake up in the morning and I would promise my wife, I'm done. I will never drink again. I promise. By 5 o'clock that afternoon after work, I'll just stop and have one. And it starts the whole cycle again. That's what makes me an alcoholic. I'm powerless over alcohol. My life is unmanageable. I believe that's step one, right? Yeah. I get confused sometimes. But I've heard people say in the program, I've had a bad day, so I'm going to double down on my meetings. I'm not going to drink no matter what. And I said the same thing. What I didn't, and I taught when I speak, I'm speaking of my own experience. What I didn't understand is I have no power. I have to find a power greater than myself. And that's tough to do. I was 43 years old. Thought I was pretty powerful. The only way I could do that is there's a chapter in the book called There is a Solution. And in there, there's two requirements. One is to find a power greater than ourselves and go to meetings. The spirit of the fellowship, the meeting, and the fellowship of the spirit, which we get by going through the 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous. The only way I've seen anybody get the spirit of fellowship and the fellowship of the spirit. So a little bit about my history. Along with Frank, I grew up in a little town called Drummond, which is 47 miles east of Missoula. It was a small cattle ranch, the place where the men are men and the sheep were really nervous. My parents were great. My mom and dad, I loved them to death. I got 8 brothers and sisters, had 8 brothers and sisters. 2 of my brothers died of this disease slowly. They died from it, ramifications of it. I had another brother that died of alcohol toxicity. I talked to the detective that investigated his death, and he said he went into his apartment and had never in his life seen so many empty bottles of vodka laying around. Typical to be aspirated and vomited and aspirated. This is a deadly disease. Fortunately, none of my sisters suffer from it. I've got a younger brother who is a dry drunk. I mean, he is as alcoholic as I am. He hasn't had a drink in 7 years, but he has all of the behavior, personality defects that I had when I was drinking, and he's miserable. The best job he ever had is what he has right now. He gets paid $30 a day to be a campground host up at Flint Creek Campground. Best job he's ever had. He's got nothing to look forward to. You know, it doesn't always kill us right away, but it kills us slowly and miserably. We slowly die an alcoholic death. Right out of high school, I went in the military. Primarily because I couldn't afford to go to college, and my grades certainly didn't support getting into college. But I didn't want to. It was in 1968. Not a good time to go in the military. There's Vietnam going on. But I didn't want to kill anybody. The irony there is, I didn't want to kill anybody, but when I was drinking and driving, I was willing to kill you or your babies or your grandbabies. But I did become a medic. I didn't want to kill anybody. Still didn't work out, but that's the way it is in Vietnam. But I went in country. I went to this medic training, and I went to combat field medical training with the 9th Marine Expeditionary Brigade. Went into Vietnam. There were 21 of us that went in together. Within 2 weeks, 11 of them were killed. And none of us made it out of Vietnam walking. It is what it is. But I didn't drink that whole time. And I'd been in country about 6 months. I just say this because it's part of my alcohol story. I went to my commanding officer, and we were in a little base called Binjai. There was probably only about 70 of us on the base, and all we did was patrol the area. And I wanted to be like John Wayne, you know, when I went over there. But the first time somebody shot at me, I lost control of my bowels and bladder, and I wanted to curl up a little ball like a little girl with a pink skirt on. That's just reality. It's just not like it is on TV. I got over that and did my job. But at about 6 months, I went to my commanding officer and I said, I got to get out of here. Because usually at 6 months, you get to go on R&R. A lot of guys would go to Thailand, Bangkok, Thailand or Hawaii, but they wouldn't let me go because I was the only corpsman left, the only medic. So I asked him if I could just go to Saigon for a few nights. And he let me go. His mistake. I got into Saigon, went to the Americana Motel, got a bottle of Jack Daniels that never drank before, and a lady of the night. But I was a medic, so I had antibiotics. At that time it was called tetracycline. Yeah, I said, before we consummate this relationship, you're going to take all of these pills. I didn't want to get venereal disease. And so she's taking the pills and I'm drinking Jack Daniels and it's taking her a while to finish the pills. And so I got to go get another bottle of Jack Daniels. The downside is the pills give you diarrhea. Working out. That's the time I remember seeing her. You know, she'd been on the toilet in there. They didn't really have toilets. They had little holes in the floor. And I that's the last thing I remember until we never did consummate the relationship. Family person, yeah. 2 MPs come charging through the door, Marine Corps MPs, and they beat the living shit out of me. They charged me with desertion in a combat zone, which means life imprisonment in Leavenworth, Kansas, or a firing squad. And this could only happen to a drunk, right? So I'm in the brig for a couple of days. They send me back to my unit. I show the paperwork to my CO. He kind of chuckles a little bit and tears up the paperwork. And says, you're confined to the base for the next 30 days, that's where we were. We weren't going anywhere. In fact, that about a month later, he got me a promotion, a combat field promotion. But that can only happen to an alcoholic. Now I completely lost where the hell I was here. I got out of the service after about 9 years. And while I was in the service, I was in the hospital for a long time. I've got a lumbar fusion, a cervical fusion, both shoulders replaced, a heart stent, and I got a stimulator in my back so I can walk. Other than that, I was great. But I did go to college at night, and I got an undergraduate degree in business and an undergraduate degree in health science. And I got hired by a small college in Ohio. There's a branch campus of Ohio State University. They tell people I taught for Ohio State University, but the branch campus, and it was just health sciences, a little 2-year college. And part of the agreement was I had to go and get a master's degree, part of our contract. I had to get a master's. So I started going to Bowling Green State University. But I started drinking with other faculty members. And that's when it really hit me. I mean, it was so fast. You know, I heard a guy say that the bonds of alcoholism are so subtle, you don't realize you have it until they're so strong, you can't break them. And that's what happened to me. It was just so quickly that I quickly realized these other people didn't drink like me, rather than I don't drink like these other people, you know. And I finally decided that if I went out drinking with you, Dave, and you had to go home to the wifey after a couple of drinks, I made a mental note that I would never drink with you again. Okay. And I finally ended up just drinking myself into oblivion. Took a few years, but that's where I went. As many of you probably know, when you do a master's, you got to defend your thesis or your project, and a project. And I went in front of these other professors, or these professors. I wasn't a professor; I was an instructor. When I was drinking, I was a professor. But I had to defend my project, and I was drunk. Needless to say, they didn't pass the project. I had to go back 2 more times before I finished defending my project. It was a good project. Primarily because the secretary in the office did most of the work. Way it is. From there, by that time, we had 2 beautiful daughters. And still have 2 beautiful daughters. And I thought I needed to move for professional opportunities. Okay, now you guys call these geographics, but it was professional opportunities. Okay? We moved from like Ohio to Montana, from Montana to Idaho. From Idaho, I got hired by Eastman Kodak, and we moved to Rochester, New York. Went from Rochester, New York to Little Rock, Arkansas, to Idaho, from Idaho to Washington, and then Washington, we ended up in Alaska, and that's where I sobered up. Geographics. Not many really successful business opportunities. But by the time we got to Alaska, the marriage was about done. My wife, don't blame her a bit. Although it's been 30 years, and the other day I was taking a shower. Well, it's been a while ago, but I was taking a shower, and I started arguing with my ex-wife, and I haven't talked to her in 30 fucking years. I still got all the time. I didn't win that argument either. But, it was rough. When we got to Alaska, I was hired by a guy to run a small medical sales and service business. And it was doing pretty well, but I was having trouble with employees. I was drinking more. I got to the point that I got kicked out of a couple of bars in Alaska. And it was just getting ugly. It got to the point that I was living. I used to say it was in a log cabin in the Eagle River Valley, because that sounds so romantic. Reality was, it was a shed. I mean, I'm talking a shed that had 3/4-inch plywood for walls. It was 400 square feet. I could sit on the toilet and brush my teeth at the same time. Oh, moving up in the world. I came in originally in January of 1992. Didn't do the steps. Didn't get a sponsor. I'll talk in a minute about identification and the differences in the program, but I identified with another Vietnam vet, and I went to AA meetings and chased girls. Right? On Memorial Weekend of 1992, this other guy and I, this Vietnam vet, went to a place called the Parrots Club on 4th Avenue in Anchorage, Alaska, just to get something to eat. He wasn't drinking and I wasn't drinking. He was been in the program. And we walked in and sat down. There's stories like this in the big book. We sat down and he said, we should really have just one drink for those guys in memory of those guys that didn't get back from Vietnam. Not a second thought. The old obsession of the mind. Boom. You bet. The next thing I remember, I was sleeping in the alley behind the Parrots Club on 4th Avenue in Anchorage, Alaska, sleeping in a cardboard box. And it was raining. But I felt I was better than the other guys around me who were also sleeping in cardboard boxes, because my cardboard box had wax on it. And I wasn't getting wet and they were. That's where my mind was. I know when and this persisted with me until I came in the program. You know, I never felt good enough, never felt equal to, at times I felt superior, but most of the time I felt inferior. I just felt like I was a tall, skinny white kid with dry skin. Now all I am is a tall, skinny old guy with dry skin. Come a long way. This is where I am. I don't want to forget everything. Okay. I want to talk a little bit about the obsession of the mind. I cannot do anything about my allergy of the body. If I don't take that first drink, the craving won't start and I don't have the problem. Problem is, I need a power greater than myself to do that. I never realized that. But I can do something about the obsession of the mind. You know, the obsession of the mind. And we just had a guy Friday night that, you know, he's been with us for about 6 months. He sounded great, looked like he had a sponsor. He was doing great, and he went back out. It was just one of those spontaneous things, like happened to me at the Paris Club. Didn't even think about it. That obsession is that thought that supersedes any other thought you might have. When I first came in the program, just an example, driving to a meeting. I'm going to open the meeting tonight. I'm going to make coffee, clean the place up, clean ashtrays. Life is great. Boy, wouldn't a bottle of vodka taste real good right now? What the heck's going on? That's the obsession of the mind. And if I didn't, and I didn't realize it, of course, till I got a good spot. Gary Graham was passed away, love him to death. He took me through the steps. One at a time, we went through the book. We went through the steps quickly. I do with my sponsees. We go through the steps quickly, and then we start over. And we go word for word, sentence for sentence, paragraph by paragraph, page by page, and bore them to death. But that's what we do. And they're doing well. I've got about five sponsees. I hate to say they're my sponsees. They say I'm their sponsor. You know, if I say I have 5 sponsees, my ego kind of gets built up. But they're great guys. And the thing is, I don't know if there's any newcomers in here. You know, I've never been to prison, never got a DUI. I listen to guys at a podium or sharing a meeting. You know, they've been to San Quentin or been on drugs, and I'm sitting there thinking, can't identify with that. That's not a requirement for alcoholism. Guys, directing money. Go ahead. Work. Oh, that's what I thought. But it's the obsession of the mind. And the only way I can get away from the obsession of the mind is the spirit of the fellowship, which means meeting, and the fellowship of the spirit. I learned the fellowship of the spirit in the meetings, how important it was. There has to be a power greater than myself. And that's where I get from going through the steps of Alcoholics Anonymous. I did those 2 things. I've been sober for 33 years because of that. I've grown spiritually because I've got sponsees that are really more my spiritual advisors than I am their sponsor. And it made a tremendous difference in my life. Go back to my notes here. They say, don't leave before the miracle happens. And what I tell new people is, one of the miracles have already happened. On July 4th of 1992, I bought a bottle or a half a gallon of vodka and a half a gallon of gin. I had like 4 days off. Drink, by myself. I don't know which one I drank. But I woke up on July the 5th in this beautiful log cabin in the Eagle River Valley that I think about that one. But it had a little piece of shit deck out front. And I was laying on that little piece of shit deck, naked. And I had bird shit on my head. Wasn't hummingbird shit. There's seagulls in Alaska. I had seagull bird shit. But I didn't drink July the 5th. I got down on my knees evening of July 5th, and I surrendered. Now, and asked for help. Now I was with the Marines in Vietnam. You don't bring up the word surrender, but I surrendered. And I got up July the 6th, and I was no longer a drunk. That decision had been removed. July the 5th, I was a drunk. July the 6th, I was no longer a drunk. If that's not a miracle, I don't know what is. And then, of course, we've all seen miracles in this program. Once been sober for a while. That one. Okay. How we doing on time? Or I got another hour and a half, right? I'm out of here. The big book says on chapter 5, beginning of chapter 5. Rarely have we seen a person fail who has followed our path. Did I say that right? Okay. I can honestly say that I have never seen a person fail who has thoroughly followed our path in 33 years. Now, I had a friend that was going to be here today and Capsule didn't show up. Oh, resentment there, okay? I'll get him back. He likes to say, look at the similarities, not the differences. Some of you may have heard that before. Look at the similarities, not the differences. So, we've also listened to my little bullshit story. So I'm going to ask you some questions. How many of you grew up, other than Frank, how many of you grew up in Drummond, Montana? So, how many of you joined the service and went to Vietnam? Out of high school. Oh. How many of you took the life of another human being? I didn't expound on that, but I'll just say this. As glorious as it seems on all these movies, if you take the life of another human being, it stays with you for the rest of your life. No matter how justified it is. How many of you bought a bottle of vodka and sold it up in Anchorage, Alaska? Okay. Those are the differences. These are the similarities. If you look at page 52, let me know if any of these click for you. We were having trouble with personal relationships. Couldn't control our emotional natures. We were prey to misery and depression. Couldn't make a living. We had a feeling of uselessness. We were full of fear. We were unhappy. We couldn't seem to be of real help to other people. Anybody identify with that? Those are the identifying characteristics of us. And that's when I came into the room, I had to realize that's what I had to focus on, not the differences. I learned that steps 1 through 3, like I had a spiritual, mental, and physical maladies. Steps 1 through 3 got me right spiritually. Steps 4 through 7 got me right mentally. Steps 8 and 9 got me right physically with the rest of the world. And 11 and 12 keep me that way. So Bill Wilson talked a lot about the spiritual experience. The spiritual experience. He talked most about spiritual experience. Myself, most people I've never met anybody that had a spiritual experience like Bill Wilson. And when I read that, I thought, so good for you, Bill. I didn't have that. I had the William James educational variety. It took me a long time to get all my little ducks in a row. But it happens if you stay in the program long enough. Now, I'd just like to talk a little bit about the gifts of the program. No, shut up. There's been many, but what has hit me the most is when I was drinking, I didn't have time when my mother was passing away to go see her. I didn't have time when my dad was passing away to go see him. Or my three brothers did not have time. And that filled me with guilt, shame, and remorse for many years after I came in the program. Even after I came in the program. After I'd been sober about 15 years, when I sobered up, I met a young gal, took advantage of my youth, and we got married. And we've been married ever since. But I watched her drink one time. She doesn't hardly ever drink. But she'll get a glass of wine at dinner, and sip on it. I'm like, drink the damn thing, I mean, I watch her like my dog watches me eat a hot dog. But we've been married about 13 years. And I had a job, best job I could have ever had in my life. And I was doing well at it. I'll say this for the end, but I was Alaska State Trooper. Most people don't like cops, but I was a good cop. They wondered why I could arrest so many drunk drivers. Didn't really have to tell them, but I had a knack for it. Bye to all my friends. But I loved the job. I ended up being the commander of the Alaska State Trooper Academy. Me. Whatever thought. But my wife came up to me one day and said, my mom and dad both have dementia. I want to go back to Colorado Springs and take care of them. And I'm like, what? What? Look at me. I mean, I'm doing great at this job. I'm going to get a promotion. I'm going to be king of the hill pretty soon. And well, we moved to Colorado Springs. And it worked out great. But the gift I want to address is all those times I wasn't there for my family that I had guilt, shame, and remorse over. Kathy's mother was dying. Hope I can get through this. She was in a coma. And I got to sit down, hold her hand, tell her I love her. Oh, thank you. I hate this part. I swear, she opened her eyes in front of me. It's just that. And that took all that guilt, shame, and remorse that's gone. And I've got a good friend down in Bitterroot Valley in the program. He has Parkinson's disease and dementia. But I take him to meetings every Friday. Got to know him and his wife. It's a beautiful, wonderful wife. And she was dying. She had cancer and she was dying. And I got to hold her hand at Providence Hospital. Nora, I loved her. And what a gift. Sorry. So I'll end with this. Almost end with this. I don't tell people what to do. If you're new, get a sponsor. Surrender. Read the big book. and help others. You know, the 12th step gives us this promise that we had a spiritual awakening as the, meaning singular, the result of these steps. But it gives us a bill that we have to pay. We've got to help other alcoholics achieve sobriety. And it gives us a challenge. We have to live these principles in all our affairs. If we do that, I guarantee you we'll stay sober. So I started with a stupid poem. I'm gonna end with a little better one here. I sought my God, a God I could not see. I sought my soul, a soul that eluded me. I sought my brother, I found all three. God bless you. Thank you for letting me speak today.
Thank you.